The jungle was a scream without a sound. An invisible enemy rained fire from the canopy, their muzzle flashes a flicker of a ghost. Clay's comms crackled with static, a useless string of curses and desperate pleas. His team, the best the world, to offer, was pinned, blind, dying. Then came the low, guttural growl of a jet, not a sleek whisper, but a beast of an engine. It was the A-10, the warthog, a relic from another era. But the pilot's voice on the line didn't sound like a hero. It was calm, cold. "Stand by, ground team. You can't see the threat, but I can, and you're not going to like what I've found." The air in the Colombian jungle was a living thing, thick with the scent of wet earth, rotting leaves, and the metallic tang of fear. It clung to the SEALs, soaking their uniforms and fogging their night vision goggles. For 3 days they had moved through this suffocating green cathedral, a 4-man team tasked with a seemingly impossible snatch and grab, capture or kill a high-value narco-terrorist named Elias El Brujo Mendoza. Mendoza wasn't just a drug lord. He was a master strategist, a ghost who orchestrated raids and assassinations from his remote mountain fortress, a place intelligence called the Aviary. Clay, call sign Hunter, was the team leader. His face, etched with a decade of grim missions, was a mask of focused intensity. He knelt behind a gnarled buttress root, the dirt cool against his palms, listening to the symphony of the jungle. It was a language he understood, the chitter of monkeys, the rustle of unseen creatures, the silence that preceded a threat. Tonight, the silence was deafening. Beside him, T-Bone, the team's breacher, a mountain of a man with a surprisingly soft voice, held his breath, his M4 trained on the inky darkness. "Hunter, I got a bad feeling," he whispered, his voice a low rumble. "We're all a little tense, T," Clay responded, his gaze scanning the tree line. "One click out from the target. Let's keep it tight." Their sniper, a man of few words and even fewer mistakes named Ghost, was positioned on a ridge 100 meters to their flank, a silent sentry with his rifle's thermal scope a third eye on the world. The fourth member, a young hotshot named Rook, was their point man, a bundle of kinetic energy and nervous chatter. He was good, but this was his first A-list op, and the tension was getting to him. "I'm telling you, this is too easy," Rook's voice hissed over the comms, a thread of static underscoring his anxiety. "No sentries, no dogs, no nothing. Feels like a trap." "It's a fortress, Rook, not a hotel," Clay said, a hint of steel in his voice. "Mendoza doesn't need guards. He's got the whole damn jungle." They pushed on, each step a carefully choreographed dance of stealth and precision. The fortress, a crumbling colonial-era hacienda with a modern concrete bunker built into the side of the mountain, appeared just as their intel predicted. There were no guards on the perimeter, no patrols, only the eerie, humid stillness. "This is it." "The aviary," Clay whispered, his heart hammering a steady rhythm against his ribs. "Ghost, you got eyes on the compound?" A long pause. The only sound was the buzz of insects. "Negative, Hunter." Ghost's voice finally came, low and strained. "Thermal is clean, but something's wrong. There's no heat signatures, no human activity at all." A cold dread seeped into Clay's bones. This wasn't an empty fortress. It was a grave. The mission parameters had shifted in a terrifying way. Before he could issue a command, the jungle erupted. The first shot was a whisper of a sound, followed by the sickening thud of a bullet hitting flesh. Rook screamed once, a choked-off cry that was swallowed by the chaos. Clay whirled, his rifle up, searching for a target, any target. But there was nothing. The shots were coming from everywhere, from the unseen shadows of the canopy, from behind ancient trees, from the very air itself. "Rook down! I repeat, Rook is down!" T-Bone's voice was a roar of fury and panic. "Return fire! I need a target! Clay yelled, squeezing off a short burst into the general direction of the muzzle flashes. But it was a futile gesture, a boxer swinging at a phantom. The enemy was invisible, perfectly camouflaged, using the dense foliage as both cover and concealment. Clay flipped his comms to the command channel, his voice a tight wire. "Phoenix, this is Hunter. We are compromised. Taking heavy fire from an unseen enemy. Rook is down. Status unknown. We are pinned. Requesting immediate close air support." The response was a frustrating, static-filled mess. "Copy that, Hunter. Static. Repeat. Your position is compromised. Stand by for assets. Estimated time to target, 7 minutes. 7 minutes. It might as well have been 7 years. The air was thick with flying lead, a deadly rain that splintered bark and kicked up plumes of dirt. Clay watched in horror as a spray of automatic rifle fire ripped through, the flimsy cover where Rook had been, silencing the young man's agonized whimpers forever. "Rook is KIA!" T-Bone's voice was a broken scream. He was firing indiscriminately into the trees, his massive frame a shield, his rage a testament to their brotherhood. "Ghost, what do you see?" Clay roared into his mic. "Nothing, Hunter. I see nothing. The thermals are useless. The tree line is too thick. I'm getting shot at from below." Ghost's voice was tight with an unfamiliar panic. The sniper, who had always seen the world, in perfect clarity, was blind. A bullet ricocheted off a rock near Clay's head, sending a spray of fragments into his cheek. He wiped the blood away with a grimace, the pain a distant thing in the face of this overwhelming slaughter. They were in a killing box, and they couldn't see the lid. Their only hope was air support, a silver bullet to solve a problem they couldn't comprehend. The minutes bled into an eternity of gunfire and shouted commands. Clay was hit, a searing burn in his shoulder, but the adrenaline numbed it. He saw T-Bone take one to the leg, his giant body jolting with the impact, but he kept firing, a bastion of defiance against the inevitable. Finally, the comms cleared, and a new voice, a disembodied presence from 1,000 miles away, cut through the din. "Hunter, this is Phoenix. Your asset is inbound. Call sign is Warthog 1. I repeat, Warthog 1. Clay's blood ran cold. The call sign was a punch to the gut. The Warthog, the A-10. He knew the aircraft, a flying tank with a fearsome cannon. But it was designed for ground attack, for clearing enemy columns in open deserts, not for surgical strikes in a dense jungle. It was a beast of a plane, slow and loud, and its strafing runs would be a nightmare in this kind of close-quarters combat. The risk of friendly fire was astronomical. "Phoenix, I'm getting a lot of rounds downrange," Clay said, trying to keep the desperation from his voice. "Is there anything else available? An F-16? Anything with more precision?" "Negative, Hunter. Warthog 1 is your only asset within a 10-minute flight window. He's the only one who can get there in time." The voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. A low, distant growl filled the air, a sound so primal it seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. It was the A-10, a harbinger of either salvation or their final resting place. "Warthog 1, this is Hunter. We are a team of 3 remaining, taking fire from all directions. Need you to engage." Clay's voice was hoarse. "Target is the jungle canopy. Grid coordinates—" "Negative, Hunter." The new voice, the pilot's, cut him off. It was a woman's voice, calm and steady, like a still lake in a storm. "I am not engaging the canopy. I can't risk collateral damage. The fire you're receiving isn't just from the jungle, it's coming from the fortress as well." Clay was incredulous. "What are you talking about? We're a click away from the fortress. We can see it. There's no activity." "Not on the surface, ground team. My thermal sensors are showing a different picture. Your target, Mendoza, isn't in the aviary. He's in a bunker directly beneath it. And you're not fighting his men. You're fighting his security drones. And they're not shooting at you. Not yet." The words hit Clay like a physical blow. The drone swarm explained everything. The invisible enemy, the impossible accuracy, the absence of human heat signatures on Ghost's scope. But the last part of her message, the part about them not being shot at, made no sense. T-Bone was bleeding. Rook was dead. Warthog 1, what in God's name are you talking about? My team is taking casualties right now, Clay screamed, his voice raw with fury and grief. I am 100 feet above your location, ground team, the pilot's voice replied, a new, more urgent edge to it. What you are experiencing isn't a firefight. It's a sonic diversion. Mendoza's men are in the compound below the surface, but the drones are creating a wall of sound and simulating muzzle flashes to herd you into a kill zone. I have them painted now just ahead of you. They're camouflaged to look like the trees themselves. As if on cue, the growl of the A-10's engines intensified, a deafening roar that shook the air. The pilot's voice came through again, sharp and commanding. Ground team, look for the thermal markers. I'm lighting them up for you. Look now. Clay risked a glance at his optical scope, his finger hovering over the fire button. He looked out into the swirling, oppressive blackness of the jungle and saw nothing. Then, a new sight appeared. The pilot wasn't dropping bombs. She was using a high-intensity laser, a precision beam that painted a dozen shimmering, heat-drenched outlines on the tree line in front of them. The thermal markers, which had been invisible to Ghost from the ground, were now stark, unmistakable targets. The A-10 hadn't redefined the battlefield with guns and missiles. It had redefined it by giving them the one thing. Clay's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against the reality of the pilot's words. A minefield. They hadn't stumbled into a kill box. They had been guided into one. The simulated gunfire, the unseen bullets, Rook's death. It all clicked into a horrifying, seamless plan. Mendoza wasn't just a ghost. He was a god, manipulating their reality from his bunker deep within the earth. Warthog 1, what's your name? Clay's voice was ragged. He needed a name. A human connection to the voice that now held their lives in her hands. Captain Eva Cole, she replied, her voice still steady, devoid of the panic that must have been consuming her. You can call me Valkyrie. We don't have much time, Hunter. The pressure plates are tied to a timer. I'm seeing an active countdown. We've got less than 3 minutes before the whole sector blows. 3 minutes. It wasn't a tactical warning. It was a death sentence. Valkyrie. What about Ghost? He's on the ridge, 100 meters to our flank. A pause, the comms filled with the low hum of her engines. I see him. He's in a clear zone, but the blast radius will get him. He needs to move now. Clay's blood ran cold. Ghost, you copy. Evac immediately. Get out of the blast zone. Copy, Hunter. Ghost's voice was calm, a stark contrast to their own fraying nerves. But I'm not leaving you. I'm giving you Overwatch. Valkyrie, can you light up any targets that get in his way? Affirmative, Ghost. I've got eyes on you. But you need to stay mobile. The drones are a diversion, but they're not useless. They can engage. I'm seeing movement now, 10 o'clock from your position. The comms chatter was a frantic, terrifying symphony. Valkyrie's calm directives, Ghost's steady resolve, and T-Bone's labored breathing beside him. T-Bone. You good? Clay asked, his eyes scanning the thermal markers the A-10 had painted on the trees. My leg's a mess, Hunter, but I can move. Let's get out of here. Negative. We're not moving, Clay said. Valkyrie, guide us, step by step. Where do we go? Okay, ground team, listen carefully. The path is narrow. It's a 6-inch wide gap between two pressure plates. I'm painting it now. Hunter, you're going to place your left foot on the green thermal marker. T-Bone, right foot on the red. Repeat that back to me. Clay stared at the ground, a patch of thick, damp earth that looked exactly like every other patch of thick, damp earth. But through his scope, a faint, shimmering green marker glowed, a ghostly outline that promised a path. Next to it, a red one for T-Bone. They were barely a foot apart. Left foot green, right foot red. Copy, Clay muttered, the words a bitter pill. He was trusting his life, his team's life, to a digital ghost, a woman in the sky he couldn't see, based on technology he didn't understand. "Hunter, on my mark," Valkyrie's voice came. Through, a countdown of her own. 3, 2, 1, step. Clay took a breath, the jungle air a knife in his lungs. He slowly, deliberately lifted his left foot and placed it on the glowing green marker. The ground held. He waited, 100 years passing in a single second. Good. Now, T-Bone, your turn. Right foot red. Go! T-Bone grunted, his legs screaming, with pain, but he moved, placing his foot exactly where the red thermal signature pulsed. The ground remained silent, and so began their terrifying ballet, a dance with death choreographed by a woman in the sky. Step by step they moved, following the ghost light of the laser. Clay's comms crackled with Valkyrie's calm instructions, each one a lifeline. "Hunter, next marker is 2 o'clock, a small depression in the dirt. T-Bone, straight ahead, next to the mossy rock." With each move, the adrenaline surged. They were not fighting. They were surviving. They were not warriors. They were puppets, their strings held by the A-10 pilot. The irony was a bitter taste in Clay's mouth. As they moved, the first of the drones finally showed their true colors. A small, camouflaged machine with 6 rotors and a whirring, high-pitched whine rose from a tree branch, its optical sensor, a malevolent red eye. It hovered for a moment, its weapon system locking on to T-Bone. "Drone, 10 meters, 23 degrees from T-Bone." Ghost's voice was a sharp crackle. "I see it." Valkyrie's voice was a whisper of steel. "Ground. Team, stay still." Before the drone could fire, a single, impossibly precise round screamed through the canopy. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and metal, a quick, violent punctuation to the silence. Ghost. He was keeping his promise, providing overwatch from his distant perch. The second drone came from the side, its simulated gunfire now a real-world threat. Its high-tech weapon, a kinetic energy rifle, sent a volley of rounds tearing into the trunk of the tree Clay was using for cover. "Hunter, this is getting hot," Valkyrie said. "The drones are getting more aggressive. They're converging on your position. I can't protect you and guide you at the same time. You need to move faster." Clay looked at T-Bone, his face a mask of pain. "T-Bone, can you keep up?" "I'll crawl if I have to," T-Bone gritted out. They sped up the pace, the dance becoming a desperate run. But a faster pace meant less precision, and less precision meant death. As T-Bone placed his foot on the next red marker, he slipped, his injured leg giving out. His boot landed a few inches to the side of the designated spot, a sickening, dull thud a whisper away from an explosion. Clay's blood ran cold. "T-Bone! Don't move! Don't breathe!" "Valkyrie, we have a problem. His foot is on a live plate." Ghost's voice was a panicked cry. Valkyrie's voice, for the first time, lost its calm. No, that's not a plate. It's an IED, a claymore. It's a proximity sensor, not a pressure plate. The blast radius. It'll take out the whole sector. Ground team, what is your status?" "His boot is next to it, not on it." "What's the proximity trigger on the claymore?" Clay's mind was racing, trying to calculate the odds. "I don't know. This is improvised. Mendoza is improvising." Valkyrie's voice was tight with frustration. "It's too hot for me to do a low pass. I can't risk blowing you up. But I can make a high-altitude run, a precision strike on the bunker entrance." "Negative! Valkyrie, no! We can't leave T-Bone. We're not leaving T-Bone. We need to get him out of here," Clay yelled. "Hunter, I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm asking you to trust me," she said, her voice now filled with a cold, terrifying authority. "I have a solution. It's a long shot, and it's going to be a rough ride." The low growl of the A-10's engines intensified, a sound that seemed to fill the entire valley. Clay looked up through the canopy, catching a brief, terrifying glimpse of the warthog, a blunt, ugly shape against the dark sky. It was turning, its powerful Gatling cannon, the GAU-8 Avenger, a massive, coiled snake waiting to strike. "Hunter, T-bone!" Valkyrie's voice was a grim command. "I'm making a run. It's a very, very low pass. I'm going to strafe the trees around you, but not you. I'm using the suppressive fire to give you a window to move. The sound, the vibrations. The sheer force of the cannon will detonate the claymore before you can move. It's a one-shot deal. Once the claymore is gone, you have to run. Fast. Follow the green markers to the exfil point. Do you understand?" Clay couldn't believe what he was hearing. She was going to use the sound and force of her own aircraft to detonate a claymore bomb. It was insane. The risk of her own plane being hit, of the blast radius taking them out, was astronomical. "Valkyrie, are you sure?" "No," she said, a new, dark kind of humor in her voice. "But I'm not leaving you down there. Stand by for impact. The GAU-8 is a beast, Hunter. You're not going to like what it does to the jungle, and I'm not going to like what I have to tell you after this is over." The jungle went from a suffocating stillness to an apocalyptic symphony in a single gut-wrenching second. The air didn't just fill with noise, it shattered. The GAU-8 Avenger, the seven-barreled cannon that was the heart of the A-10, unleashed a sound that was less a crack and more a physical blow. It was the sound of a god tearing the world apart, a ripping, visceral roar that burrowed into their bones. Clay's eardrums screamed in protest, a sharp metallic pain that was almost enough to distract him from the ground beneath him. The rounds, a river of depleted uranium and high-explosive fury, tore into the trees around them. Not a random spray, but a deliberate, terrifyingly precise pattern. The trunk of an ancient ceiba tree exploded in a shower of splinters and bark, its canopy ripped to shreds. The concussion of the shells striking the earth was like 100 small detonations going off at once. The entire ground shook, a violent tremor that threatened to throw Clay and T-Bone off their feet. Then came the second explosion, a deafening crack that was mercifully swallowed by the A-10's roar. The claymore, a hidden knife at their throats, detonated in a spray of deadly shrapnel that thankfully flew away from them, its sensor fried by the GAU-8's sheer force. A wave of superheated air washed over them, smelling of ozone and scorched. "Earth! Move! Move! Move!" Valkyrie's voice was a sharp crackle, cutting through the fading sound of the warthog as it pulled up, its engines a fading, vengeful growl. Clay didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed T-Bone's good arm, hauling the larger man to his feet. T-Bone, his face a mask of pain and shock, hobbled forward, his injured leg dragging behind him. They were moving now, not with the stealth of seals, but with the desperate, clumsy urgency of men running for their lives. "Hunter, stay on the markers." "T-Bone, put your weight on me," Clay yelled, his own voice hoarse from shouting over the gunfire. The drones were gone, their systems fried by the electromagnetic pulse of the GAU-8's run. But Mendoza had a fail-safe. A new enemy emerged from the chaos. Not machines this time, but men. They wore green and black camouflage that made them almost invisible in the jungle. They were well-armed, well-trained, and they weren't shooting at random. They were moving in a disciplined formation, their weapons pointed at the ground, targeting T-Bone's leg. New contacts, 3, 4, maybe 5 of them. Ghost's voice was a lifeline. "They're flanking you, Hunter. 2 o'clock." Clay spun, his M4 spitting fire. He took down one of the gunmen, a spray of red mist against the green backdrop. But another one was already moving to replace him. They were relentless, like a pack of wolves sensing a wounded animal. "Valkyrie, I need support. These are Mendoza's." "Men!" Clay screamed into his comms. "Negative, Hunter! I'm on fumes! I've got to refuel! I can't give you another pass!" "You're on your own. Ghost, can you help?" "I've got them, Hunter." Ghost's voice was a grim whisper. A single, sharp crack echoed through the jungle. One of the gunmen who had been about to flank them collapsed, a small dark hole in his head. The sniper was doing his best, but he couldn't stop all of them. Clay and T-Bone pressed on, the green thermal markers a flickering path to a desperate hope. The jungle, which had been a death trap, was now a race against time, a mad dash toward the one place that promised salvation. Their destination, an old abandoned landing strip about a click from their current position. Intel had promised a medevac helicopter would be waiting there. They burst out of the tree line and into the clearing. The air was a little cooler here, less thick with the stench of rot and blood. In the center of the clearing, a landing beacon was flashing, a stuttering, hopeful light in the oppressive darkness. And there it was, a helicopter. A vintage Huey, its rotors spinning slowly, waiting for them. Clay felt a wave of relief so intense it was almost dizzying. They had made it. They were safe. He and T-Bone staggered toward the chopper, their bodies screaming in protest. "Valkyrie, we're at the exfil point, we're in!" Clay yelled, a genuine note of triumph in his voice. "Copy that, Hunter. Good luck," she replied, her voice now fading into the distance. They reached the helicopter, and Clay began to help T-Bone inside. The pilot, a man with a scarred face and a cold, vacant stare, leaned out of the cockpit. He wasn't wearing a flight suit. He was wearing the jungle camo of Mendoza's men. The man smiled, a chilling, humorless grimace. "I'm afraid you're not in, Hunter. You just walked into the aviary's last trap, and you brought the rest of your team with you." The pilot's smile was a flick of a knife in the dark. It was the final piece of Mendoza's puzzle, the cruel punchline to a joke told with blood and bullets. Clay's mind, battered by the chaos of the last hour, snapped into a cold, lethal clarity. He had to be a predator, not a puppet. He shoved T-Bone hard behind the protection of the helicopter's fuselage, a desperate final act of defense. "Ghost! Ghost, do you copy?" Clay's voice was a frantic hiss into the comms. "The pilot is a trap! Exfil is compromised! We're surrounded!" From his perch on the ridge, Ghost's world was a silent, unblinking eye. He watched through his scope as the scene unfolded below. The helicopter, a symbol of hope, was a Trojan horse. The pilot's cruel smirk, the slow, deliberate movement of Mendoza's men as they emerged from the tree line, their rifles trained on the clearing. He saw Clay push T-Bone to safety, a desperate, impossible act. Ghost's blood ran cold. He had a clear shot on the pilot, on the gunman emerging from the tree line, but the angle was wrong. Any shot he took risked hitting Clay or T-Bone. He was 100 meters away, but in this moment he might as well have been a world away. "Hunter, I see them." Ghost's voice was a low, desperate growl. "I'm looking for an angle. T-Bone, you got any cover?" T-Bone, his leg on fire, propped himself against the helicopter's landing skid. "Negative, Ghost. The chopper's a cage. They got us. Get the hell out of here, man. Don't get bagged for us." Clay didn't bother with words. He aimed his rifle at the pilot, but before he could fire, the man spoke into a headset, his grin widening. "You think you're going to kill me? El Brujo has a message for you, SEALs. He wanted you to know he's been watching you. Every step of the way. From your first breath in this jungle to your last." The words were a hammer blow. It hadn't just been a trap. It had been a game, a cat playing with its food. And now the game was about to end. The pilot leaned out of the cockpit, his rifle coming up. Ghost knew he had to do something, anything, to break the rhythm of this execution. He couldn't kill the men, but he could change the board. His scope settled on the most dangerous element in the clearing, the helicopter itself. A vintage Huey, its engine exposed, its fuel tank a vulnerable metal gut. An explosion would be a devastating gamble, but inaction was a guarantee of death. It was the only choice he had. He made the calculation in a fraction of a second. Wind speed, the bullet drop, the fuel line's location. He took a breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The shot was not a crack, but a flat, dull thud. The round, a hardened steel slug, sliced through the night air and found its mark with sickening precision. It didn't hit the engine, but the fuel line feeding it. A spray of gasoline erupted from the chopper, an invisible, volatile cloud in the humid air. Then, a spark from the helicopter's spinning rotor. The explosion wasn't an ordinary blast. It was a hellish eruption of sound and light that swallowed the clearing whole. The chopper became a fireball, a searing mushroom cloud that obliterated the pilot and the approaching gunman in a single fiery flash. Clay and T-Bone were thrown to the ground by the concussive force, their bodies battered by the shock wave. The world went silent, then filled with the crackle of burning debris and the hiss of superheated steam. Clay, his ears ringing, pushed himself up, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror. He looked at the wreckage of the helicopter, then at the ground beneath it. The blast had torn away the earth, not just exposing a crater, but something else. A massive steel hatch, its hinges rusted, but its surface a dull, matte black. It was the entrance to Mendoza's bunker, hidden beneath a thin layer of earth and camouflage. But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. The explosion hadn't just revealed the bunker. It had also ripped away the cover from the clearing, a vast, carefully woven net of pressure-sensitive fabric, camouflaged to look like the ground. The blast had ripped it to shreds. The net was a giant tripwire, and the helicopter wasn't a medevac. It was the detonator. The men emerging from the tree line weren't just assassins. They were observers, watching to make sure the SEALs stepped into the final trap. And Ghost's shot, meant to save them, had instead triggered the very thing Mendoza had been waiting for. The ground beneath them, the landing strip they had so desperately run toward, wasn't a path to salvation. It was a trap door, and it was opening. The ground beneath them bucked and groaned, not with the force of the blast, but with the shuddering of massive hydraulics. The steel hatch, a silent, predatory mouth, began to descend into the earth. Clay instinctively tried to lunge for it, to catch a glimpse of what lay below. But he was too slow. A metal maw closed with a definitive final thud, sealing them in a new kind of darkness. A darkness that smelled of machine oil and recycled air, a world away from the humid organic. Scent of the jungle. The fall was short but brutal. The steel floor of the bunker slammed up into them, sending a jolt of fresh pain through T-Bone's leg and rattling the teeth in Clay's skull. The sudden, artificial light of the facility blinded them for a moment. They weren't in a cave. They were in a pristine, white-walled chamber that felt more like a research lab than a drug lord's lair. "What the hell?" T-Bone muttered, pushing himself up, his M4 still clutched in his hand. Clay, his mind working at a fever pitch, scanned the room. The walls were lined with monitors, 100 different feeds showing the jungle above. He saw the A-10's fading, heat signature, the crater where the helicopter had been, and a dozen tiny red pings representing the drones that had been fried by the cannon blast. Mendoza had been watching them, not with guards, but with a web of technology. He hadn't been a ghost. He had been an architect. Suddenly, a new voice cut through their comms, a crisp, disembodied sound from the bunker's own internal system. "Welcome to the aviary, SEALs. I hope you enjoyed the show. I must admit the sniper's little stunt with the helicopter was a surprise, but a welcome one. It saved me the trouble of detonating the net myself." The voice was smooth, cultured, with an undercurrent of genuine amusement. It was the voice of a man who loved his work. It was the voice of El Brujo. A new set of monitors flickered to life. The feeds showed a clean, minimalist office, and in the center of it a man in a crisp white linen suit. He had a glass of amber liquid in his hand, and he was smiling, a predator's calm, patient grin. "Hunter, T-Bone, I have a message for you. Your mission is not to capture or kill me. Your mission is to survive. You have made it to the second act of my play. The curtain is rising, and the stage is now yours." Before they could respond, the chamber around them came to life. From the ceiling, sleek black drones, smaller and more lethal than the ones above ground, descended on silent cables. Their optical sensors, a single malevolent red light, locked onto Clay and T-Bone. These weren't the decoys they had faced in the jungle. These were real. Clay and T-Bone scrambled for cover, their rifles spitting fire, but the drones were fast. They moved with an inhuman precision, dodging bullets and returning fire with kinetic energy weapons of their own. The room filled with the crackle of gunfire and the high-pitched whine of drones being taken down. But for everyone they destroyed, 2 more emerged. Then a new voice cut through the comms. It wasn't Mendoza. It was Valkyrie, her voice urgent and strained. "Hunter, I'm back. I'm orbiting. The bunker. It's a black box to me. No thermal, no comms? What's your status?" "We're in the bunker, Valkyrie. It's a trap. He's got automated defenses," Clay screamed, emptying a magazine into a drone that was closing in on T-Bone. "He's watching us. He knows everything." A chilling, triumphant laugh echoed through the chamber, coming from the monitors. "He knows more than you think, Hunter. Look to your left." Clay turned his head, his heart a stone in his chest. A new monitor, a large one, flickered to life. On it was a live feed of the ridge above the bunker. On the ridge knelt Ghost, his sniper rifle still in position, unaware that his location was now a broadcast for all to see. And behind him, 2 of Mendoza's men, their faces grim, their rifles trained on the sniper's back. The comms crackled with Ghost's frantic, static-filled voice as he tried to warn them. But it was too late. The men were already on him. "You see, Hunter," Mendoza's voice purred, "I have to know what's happening outside, too. You see, the A-10. It didn't redefine your battlefield, it redefined mine, and now the hunt is on. For all of you.